forward into Sir Alex, stepping into the Aberdeen job after the early days, Ali McLeod, and certainly being aware of our time restrictions here as well. But, can you give us a little snapshot of your experience of the early days of Sir Alex and how that evolved and, what that did for you as a player as well, Alex?
Yeah, well, I made my debut under Billy McNeill when that was away. I think I was 19 days short of my 19th birthday, and I was away back, 78 or something. And then Billy went back to Celtic, and Alex Ferguson came in. Ali McLeod was first manager, then Billy McNeill, and then Alex Ferguson came in. And I was still in the reserve dressing room at the time, and the players were just getting to know the gaffer, and he'd come from St Mirren. He had some good players. He had Big Jackie Copeland, good centre back, and Jim. I'm not sure if he had Jimmy Bourne, Frank McGarvey certainly as well, and Sir Alex kind of started comparing the St Mirren players to the boys that were in the Aberdeen dressing room. And at that time, I remember the first team guys were a wee bit kind of annoyed with the gaffer's approach, saying Jackie Copeland did this and Frank McGarvey was good at that, and our centre forwards were starting to say, "But Frank McGarvey better than me," or what? And Willie Muller would be saying Jackie Copeland better than me, and then Alex Ferguson, which good managers do, they recognise, wait a minute, I think I'm going down the wrong track here, and they quickly reversed his strategy, and he started to get them on side again. And going into the first team dressing room was the first time he brought me into midfield, play a game against the Celtic in a cup tie, and he said, "I'm going to play in midfield as a holding midfielder, and I want you to be a scarf round Tommy Byrne's neck." So, I had to man mark Tommy the whole game, and he said, "When you get a ball, just keep it simple." And I'd played in midfield anyway, through the boys' clubs, and also as I said, started as a centre forward, then I went in midfield, and then I went back to the centre back position. And that was a kind of debut game with Alex, and I kind of never looked back from that one, really. I played in midfield for the rest of the season, and then Willie Garner was playing partner with Willie Miller, and Big Willie Garner got a bad injury, and Sir Alex moved me back, and that was the start of our long, illustrious career together.
Take us forward a wee bit then. We'll jump straight forward to it, Alex, to May the 11th, 1983. Real Madrid, talk us through that journey a little bit, and certainly, a landmark in Scottish football and at Aberdeen Football Club, and I'm sure for yourself. And talk us through that journey a wee bit, Alex.
Yeah, it's hard to see that ever happening again. It's hard to think it could ever happen again, because a wee provincial Diddy club, beating the mighty Real Madrid. And it's something that you can only dream of nowadays. But we had a good run in the cup. We never lost a game the whole tournament until the semi-final. We lost 1-0 to a Belgian team, but we beat them 5-1 at Pittodrie. We'd beaten Bayern Munich in the quarter-finals, and we felt when we beat Bayern Munich that our name was on the cup. And going to Gothenburg, and we had 2 nights before the game, and Sir Alex, he kept the quizzes going. He loved the quiz, and just to relax us, and he always fixed the quiz so that he could win, So we wanted to prove to him that we could win for him against the mighty Real Madrid, and it was the non-stop rain the whole night. But when I look back at the video now, and I was speaking to Gordon Strachan about this, Gordon says, I've never watched it for years, big man. I just took it out. And he said, we were absolutely brilliant. So we played fantastic, played Real Madrid off the park in the 90 minutes, but it was a draw. And then, of course, John Hewitt came on and got the winning goal. So it was a thing of dreams, and needless to say, I was obviously watching Liverpool last night and seeing all the players celebrating. It took me back to the memories at Real Madrid, and when we beat Real Madrid, and the tour of, okay, there's social distancing at the moment, but we did the tour of the city and the bus, and a couple of 100,000 Aberdonians turned out to greet us back from Aberdeen Airport. It was just sensational stuff, and great memories.
And I think that was I'm sure you can attest to this, that was a very special group. That was a special team. When you look back at the individuals you had in it, Alex, and it was maybe no coincidence that so many of them became, had a long career in the game, or became managers or coaches, or, is that how you look back on it? Just a special group of people led by a special leader?
Yeah, and as we said, Sir Alex came in and he took that team. Billy McNeill had led us to, a reasonable success, but it was 3 runners up. We were runners up in all competitions. When Billy had only 1 year at Aberdeen, so it was there for Alex to try and take it a step further. He brought in Mark McGee. Mark didn't have a particularly good start, but then he started to come onto his own, and he was a determined guy, Mark, and he was a confident guy. Nothing seemed to faze him, even if he had a bad game. Yeah. So that was a great character to have in the dressing room. Yeah. And then, of course, bringing Peter Weir was just about one of the final cogs to allow us to go and win a major European trophy. Yeah. Bringing Peter in, as I said, a sensational winger with 2-footed, and very much, like the Laudrup brothers and his style of play.
And I think last question here, just on your playing days, Alex, is you mentioned the wee Diddy team for Aberdeen. I think back to that, the early and mid 80s and late 80s, where the new firm dominated the old firm. Yeah. You think of the success back then at Dundee United beating Barcelona, the players that came for Dundee United, the strength at Aberdeen, and certainly the old firm were secondary at that time. Can you speak to that a wee bit of, the new firm and the success of that, and why that might never happen again?
I know. Well, Alex Ferguson and Jim McLean were the new breed of managers, weren't they, at that time? And Jim was quite a ferocious guy as well, as we know. And Sir Alex, they tagged the hairdryer one to him. But they were strong, and they always... You knew if you made a mistake in the first half. We talk about the small points in football, getting them right is vital. And little things like when we went to play at Celtic Park and at Ibrox, he would say to us, look, when you get a throw-in or a free kick, run and get that ball, get it down, get it moving, because Celtic and Rangers think teams only come to their ground to waste time. But we're going there to win. And he said, and that will terrorise them when they see us doing that. And right enough, you kind of start to find the wee mental edge when you actually see that happening. We're running to take throw-ins, and you could see some of the Rangers players, Celtic players reacting and going, a minute, they're supposed to waste time when they come to our ground, then that's not like other teams. And it kind of put them on the back foot a little bit. And we started to win in Glasgow quite regularly. And, we weren't fazed with the quality of that team when we went to Glasgow.
And I'm just going to pass you on to Kingy now, but just before I do that, we touched on the Rangers-Celtic thing, and I just want to highlight that Colin Miller's here again with his Ibrox picture in the background, and he's displaying it proudly over his right shoulder. Colin, I know you're not trying to hide that, and I didn't want to mention that again. I was wondering if you would remove it after, the pelters you took last week, but delighted it's still there for you, Colin.
Listen, you can't take away what's in your heart, big man. This is pride of place of my house. This limited print. So
oh, you've just kicked up a storm here early on a Friday morning already, Colin. I'm going to ask you for your Jock Wallace Old Firm story in a minute.
We're not ready for that.
I've got that one as well.
Brilliant. I'm in great company.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that, mate. And I'm going to pass you over to Kingy here. He's going to dive straight into the management stuff.
Okay, pal. Thanks.
Thanks.
Here we go, big man. All of yesterdays, we've never done this before.
I know. This is like me and you sitting down for a piece again. And
The old days.
was it the Sun you worked for, I think, wasn't it?
And the Sunday Mail. It was two. I got the good bit of club management, Alex, and going back, astonishingly, I think, 26 years to your kind of debut as a manager at Motherwell. And going into, I remember at that time, obviously, a great friend of mine, one of my best mates, Rob McKinnon, was in the team at left back, and Paul Lambert, Billy Davis, terrific players that you inherited. And people forget, finished second in the league.
Yeah.
With that team in your first season. I think there's a lot of players, a lot of people on here. Obviously, we've got David Bagan and Alex Burke from the Kilmarnock Cup winning team on the call as well, who've made that switch from player to coach. What was that like for you at first, switching from being, such a dominant force as a player to becoming a coach and having to go in and earn the respect of the dressing room the first time?
Yeah, when I went in the first time, I was actually feeling it in my stomach. I thought, God, this is some leap for me to go from playing one day to being the manager the next day. And I'd phoned Alex Ferguson, and I said, what do you think? Well, they've offered me the player manager job, but my career path, I was thinking, well, I should go and work with a top coach first, and get a bit of the coaching drills and the cones and bibs and stuff before I go into it. But Alex Ferguson says, how do you know when you're ready? He said it's a good club. It's run by a great chairman. At the time, the people in charge were excellent people. Never gave me any money, but they said if I got money, I would get something to spend. And when we sold Phil O'Donnell, I got a wee bit. God rest his soul. We got a wee bit to spend. But going in there, John Chapman was the chairman, and he was a lovely guy. Never interfered. Never told me who to pick or who to buy, and just a great guy. He told me, get the wages right. You've got a budget of X amount. If you get the national insurance, everything, and just as well I'd studied accountancy over the 3 previous years, going into that job. So I managed to get that down to a T. And when I went in, I'd seen how well Motherwell done the previous season. They were third, I think, under Tommy McLean. And when I saw the skills of guys like Rob McKinnon, as you rightly say, Chris McCart, and these were only even the blooming defenders. Never mind the forwards. Billy Davis, we got a lot out of Billy. He was a great little player. And also Tommy Coyne, just a fantastic striker who knew his way about the pitch and in the box especially. And he turned out top goal scorer that year. And I just tried to give the guys, a bit of freedom. And I don't know if Chris McCart says it was a wee bit different to Tommy. Tommy maybe was a wee bit more defensive. That's Chris's opinion. But we definitely played some amazing football. Going up to my old club, Aberdeen, Willie Miller was the manager, and we've gone up there and won 3-1 or something like that, and with a scintillating display, Coyne scoring goals, and as I say, Rab buzzing up and down the wing back role, and we had so many great players. And you're right, I inherited it, but that when we finished second, I thought, wow, this management lark is dead easy. So then I was about to get the next season. Then I knew what management was all about. And one of the most important things, which had been in our pre-chat that we had, is recruitment.
Yeah.
And so we were looking. Tommy Coyne, after the first season, Tommy's away. He's gone. His knee was gone. Chris McCart's knee was done in. There was about 10 players left that squad. Good players. Rab McKinnon went away to 20 Enschede as one of the first ever Bosman signings.
Right, yeah.
Paul Lambert went to Borussia Dortmund, and we know the history of how well Paul done, despite me trying to chase him all over Europe to say, come back and play for Motherwell. So you're losing all these players in one fell swoop. And so my job was to try and replace them. And in those days, we didn't have sporting directors or people who kept a database of other potential great players if we needed them. So there was a boy, John Hendry at Spurs. Lovely. We're down to see him in a reserve game. And he actually moved brilliant. His movement was great. And he had kind of Tommy Coyne, what would you call it? Some of the things that Tommy done.
Attributes, yeah.
Attributes. And his movement, again, God, he amazed me, Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
But when I brought John, obviously he was still a kid, 21. He doesn't have all the answers at that age. And we really struggled that season, and to get John to be as prolific as Tommy Coyne was just impossible for me to do that. In the giant industry of the top level football, then John wasn't quite as adept as Tommy Coyne was. He years ahead of him to be what Tommy Coyne was. So
was that one of the massive lessons, if you like, as a young coach? Obviously, there's a lot of kind of developing coaches on the call, Alex, that we tend to get, or I work with younger coaches here who are so obsessed by the X's and the O's and game models and philosophies and all that kind of stuff. How massive is recruitment?
It is massive. For me, it's the most important. Well, if you look at Jurgen Klopp, he just won the championship last night. 4 years he's been at Liverpool to win that championship. Now, you can see in certain moments of his Liverpool career that he's playing a midfielder at centre-back who's getting done by balls over the top from teams like Watford. The goalkeeper wasn't quite adequate. Mm-hmm. So, obviously a lot of people would have noticed these things and saying, well, Jurgen has to sort that out, he has to sort this out. And we also knew that somebody like Virgil van Dijk was going to be absolutely sensational if he came to Liverpool. Eric Black was his coach at Southampton. We knew what he'd done at Celtic. I'd seen him as a kid when I was doing my scouting over in Holland. Ajax and PSV both knocked him back because he had a mistake in him, But that's what I'm saying about young players. They should be allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And they have to make mistakes before they learn. And when you see, as I said, Klopp bringing these players, they become the expensive players because of the record transfer fees that they have to pay. But I'm afraid that's the way it is.
Yeah. Recruitment
Of bringing the academy boys through is a great thrill. And I'd done that at the last couple of clubs I was at, when I was at Genk. I brought about 8 or 9 young boys through into first team who've all gone away and made the club a fortune, mm-hmm. But they've also had no bad careers for themselves. Sergei Milinkovic-Savic is now playing for Lazio.
Yeah.
And Wilfred Ndidi was my only signing in a year at Genk. He's playing for Leicester now, and they're talking about 80 million for him. I should have became his agent. And so, recruitment, back to recruitment. And it's not easy to recruit young ones, but I think that it's really important for the young ones. For me, as I said, I had a brilliant upbringing in the boys' clubs. You end up, the more you play football, the more you learn. you play in competitions, then you start to work things out. If you're just doing drills every day, then I'm afraid, that's not what I would see as the best development for young players. I think they've got to play and get games. Scott McTominay he came to the Scotland team. Josie gave me a shout, come to see me, and you can get him recruited. He only wanted to play for Scotland, he was very passionate about that. But again, young, not all the answers, but throw him right into the Scotland environment. But then he starts to disappear at the Man United team, and they need to play. Yeah. All of a sudden, he got himself back in. With every game, he's improved. Mm. And that's, the fundamentals in training are really obviously very important. Things Alex Ferguson way back in the day was the third man running and all that, and little tips like that. It gave me another string to my bow when I was playing in midfield against him, making runs off the ball and knowing when to support with the third man running. Things like that. The younger that you get taught those, you never forget them. And I think that's key. It's hard, Kingy, to get a guy in at 19 and you see he's got a lot of bad habits. It's blooming hard to change them at that age, even although he's only 19, 20. It's hard to change, and it's a process. Mark Albright I had at Villa, he was such a quick wee player. I would tell him to come towards the ball and then spin, just go behind, and we could, get the full back in the same wavelength as him. And it was hard for him to kind of process it. And then when he leaves Aston Villa, for some reason he gets a bit of freedom in his head with Leicester City, and he was playing like an absolute demon in the year they won the championship. I don't know if he's injured at the moment, but he's no figuring. But he learned. But it's hard to teach them at the older ages. Get into them in the early moments, the young ones.
You look at recruitment when you went to Hibs, Alex. When you moved on to Hibs, recruitment, Sosie, lack of players like that. When you think about recruitment there, I know this is close to Kaylee's heart, who's a Hibs fan. So when you get to Kaylee's section, you'll be in good company there. She's a Hibs fan. So
great, Kaylee, brilliant. Didn't know that.
But Sosie and stuff like that. How much of an influence did he have on you, on you as a coach, and also on the players around him at Hibs?
It was good. I was into the world soccer. I've been buying it for years and years, just getting a handle on European players and players that play in South America, and I keep in touch with some of the journalists from there, and there's an English one who works in South America, and they've given me great tips over the years if I'm looking at a certain player. Sorry, what was the start of the question?
You're saying how much an influence was Sosie?
Aye, Frank. Yeah. Well, an agent came to me and said, "Yeah, I've got a cracker for you." And he said, "Have you ever heard of a guy called Frank Sosie?" I says, "Aye." He says, "I've played against him with Scotland, and I've followed his career. I know he's played in Italy. He won the European Cup with Marseille. And he's an absolute legend in France." Well, he's fell out with Montpellier, and his agent said he would come to Scotland if it was the right deal for him. I says, "Well, I'd take him in a minute, absolutely." So free transfer, but Frank was a wee bit more heavy with the wages, and right. So the players didn't moan about that one bit because they knew what he could do for them. But he was absolutely brilliant. And when I saw him we started in a 4-4-2, and I thought maybe his legs are not quite there for that. So I went back to my Motherwell days with the three at the back and put him in the centre of the three. And from there, he just ran the show. He was pinging 50-yard passes onto a 50-pence piece, he could have done that. You know, he was so accurate, brilliant manipulation with his feet of the football, and as you know, he is some legend there in Edinburgh right now. I was over seeing him just before lockdown. My wife was it was her birthday, 3rd of March, and we went over to stay with Frank for the weekend just before her birthday on the Monday or the Tuesday, and the memories, he absolutely loved Hibs, loved it.
Great season, third in the league and a cup final, you know. And I think at that time, as well as a coach you were developing, I think that'd be around that time you got your pro license, your UEFA pro license, and
Yeah,
having come through that pathway with the guys that everyone that's on here.
mm-hmm.
What did you think of your coach education at the SFA and your journey through it all?
Yeah, I thought the way that the boys ran the coaching was tremendous. You know, Andy Roxburgh, Craig Brown, and back in the time, and they had amazing coaches backing them up, like Walter Smith, Archie Knox. You know, guys that I kind of only admired throughout my career, but no knowing really what they done in terms of the teaching of the whole thing. But when I went to Largs, working with them, Jimmy Bone, all these guys, and really brilliant at delivering sessions and, you know, teaching you the rudiments of, you know, how to coach 11 players on the pitch. You know, we had some funny moments. You know, Davy Dodds was coaching a team, and one of the coaches that was supervising had to step on and said to Davy, listen, you know, that's really good coaching, but you're coaching the wrong team. He was coaching the other team. So, no, it was a great system, and it worked really well. And as you know, I think Mourinho was at Largs. One or two others, which don't spring to mind at the moment, had gone to Largs. I'm not so sure that it's set up like that anymore.
Yeah,
but it's all kind of changed. So the coaching side is great, but I think with the youngsters, you know, and I know that's dear to your heart as well. It's when you get them at young ages. I remember things my dad was telling me when I was in the park when I was 5. You know, like don't let the ball bounce before it comes to you. You know, go and meet it first. You know, and just little gems like that when you went into a big club and you trained with them and you saw some people doing that and you go, I mean, I know him well than he does, you know, and he's been playing in this team for the last couple of years, and you kind of feel empowered by that, and I think that the whole process for young players is learning throughout their junior days, because these are the moments that they go in that brain and you never forget them.
Yeah. When you came away from Hibs, on Dick Advocaat's recommendation, if I remember right, people forget, like he was the guy who probably said to David Murray, if we're going for a young promising Scottish manager, it should be Alex McLeish. And the league was gone when you came into Ibrox, right? In the first season, the league was gone, which is why Dick was probably leaving.
Yeah.
But again, talking about stepping into another level, into another dressing room, now you're in the monster, right? Which is the Old Firm. And you won 2 cups in your first season. How important was that to get that bounce right away and come in to win right away?
Yeah, 100%. It was very, very important, because I was greeted by a bit of negative kind of questions.
Don't blame the media now. Don't blame the media.
No, some negative questions, but they're there. That's what your job is, and they're there to put pressure on you. That's why I don't think they're called the press for nothing. And it's to see how you react. And one of the questions I got was, Ali, you got a pretty lukewarm reception from the fans or whatever, and I said, well, listen, it's up to me to prove to the fans that I'm the right man for the job. So, you know, it was a good I turned the negative into a positive. And then, of course, the first game against Celtic, all the demons on your shoulders, one shoulder and a good one there, and the negative one saying, listen, what if you never beat Celtic in any game ever in your whole career here? You know, you'll be the laughing stock, and if you don't win a trophy, blah, blah. So everything that was negative was on that one, and I said, but what if you do, you know? And fortunately, I went in and I cuddled the players, basically. They'd fallen out with Dick. There was a wee bit of unrest. Amaruso had fallen out, and I don't think Dick was playing him. He got injured. I phoned him directly and I said, we need you in this team. And he says, music to my ears, boss. You know, that's my Italian kind of English. And Big Amo come back and was an absolute beast for myself and, more importantly, for Rangers. And the thing is, you're right. If I hadn't done anything in the first 6 months, I could already have been a goner. And that's life with Rangers and Celtic. They're amongst an elite group of teams in the world who just have to win every week. Every week. You know, a draw was a disaster. You know, the year we won the treble, we drew 1 each with Kilmarnock in the first game. Celtic won, and the Sunday papers said the league's finished.
League's finished.
The first game.
Badge.
The thing is, that was Ian King that wrote that, Alex.
That could have been, no, maybe.
Gordon Strachan talked about it in pre-season when we did the Gordon Strachan one, Alex, where only in Scotland could you lose a pre-season friendly and have your badge cracked on the back of the Daily Record the next day. There's the broken badge on the back of the Daily Record. Well, that's Scotland for you. What was it like going into that kind of dressing room with big characters in there like Ronald de Boer, Berge?
World-class players. You know, guys that went to the semi-finals of the World Cup after Arthur Newman. Well, I went in there and I was, quite frankly, bricking it. You know, but I always tried to empower players when I was first meeting them and talking. I said, look, you know, we want you to express yourself. I think we've got to change our style a wee bit. The games I've been watching you guys over the past few months is that you try to walk everything into the net, you know, and it's almost like the perfect Dutch goal is, you know, they go to the byline, they come across last man, put it across the box, and it's a tap in, you know, and that was pure, perfect Dutch football. And I changed the tempo of the team to get it forward a bit quicker, not the long ball, but by just passing it quicker and being quicker with the feet, and shifted De Boer to centre forward. Mikey Moles was injured at the time and struggling to kind of get back to his best, and until I played him in a game against Dumbarton and I saw the heart he had, and I decided there and then that he was going to be part of the plans again. Yeah. He come back scoring loads of goals. So sorry about this. You wouldn't believe us. Graham's on the phone.
Tell him you're on to more important people.
Aye, I know. So I'll need to go back to him.
You will. He'll be angry. But,
yeah. So it was about getting the very best out of them, and I was doing a warm up and running around the track with Ronald de Boer at my side, and I kind of sidled up to a lot of them, just trying to get feel and get connection. And I started talking to Ronald about his Champions League games the previous season with Ajax. I said, I remember that one where you lost at home to Panathinaikos, and then you went over there and battered them 3-0 with one of the best displays I've ever seen. And Ronald had told one of the staff, and he says, the coach, he knows everything about my career, you know. And so it wasn't a bad start, but even better.
Management with someone like him, doesn't it? Because obviously knowing him and interviewing him around that time and getting close to that camp, I mean,
yeah,
he did love himself a little bit, to be fair, but that's you using your probably things that you've known from Fergie and his man management, how to manage people at De Boer and how to get in their heads. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a thing for young people to learn.
I never ever went with the old adage that you've got to treat them all the same. You have to treat them all the same. Loads of different players with different personalities, and it's important to get to know them, I think, in terms of how they work. And you know, you've got as you say, the Mavericks, and you know that the Maverick is probably a guy who's going to have an ego. And Ronald, again, a couple of years ago, I said, listen, I've picked you in my all-time great team of ever coached. And there was silence at the other end. And I says, well, I thought you'd be happy. And he says, well, that's normal.
That kind of sums them up. I think like couldn't leave it, and I'm hugely disappointed that Johnny Burns is on the golf course and has dodged the week when we talk about Helicopter Sunday. But at least we've got Eric here to talk about it. So, I mean, that day and that people forget that the 2003 treble was against Martin O'Neill's Seville team, but in
they do because Martin even said a few weeks ago, and I remember him saying it back in the time as well, that this was the best Celtic team since the Lisbon Lions. Yeah. And I thought, well, that must make us some team then.
Exactly. So people forget about that treble, but 2 years on, you've got less money. I think you have free, maybe free transfer signings. I think in Boomsong and Dado Pusso, you're 5 points behind with 4 games to go. Mm-hmm. You get Big Marv and God on your side, and keep believing, and Marvin Andrews and all that stuff. What do you remember of that day, Alec? I mean, that day is probably one of the most remarkable days in Scottish football history. I mean, I think every number one writer, I was a chief football writer at the time, I was at Fir Park. So everyone had been sent to Fir Park to see Celtic win the title. Which obviously I was delighted in my sports editor that I wasn't at Easter Road that day. But what do you remember of it, that whole experience?
Well, we the odds were heavily stacked against us, as you know, and I think there was the players were quite quiet. Marvin kept doing his believe in the dressing room and even training every day and that. But there was a sense that we couldn't see Celtic losing or dropping points. But the one thing that we emphasised the whole week was that you've got to win this Hibs game, and your pride's intact. We'll get stick for not winning the league or whatever. That always comes with playing for our coach and Rangers or Celtic. It doesn't matter how close it is or anything, but that was the real mantra. And even in the dressing room for the game, I think it was realistic that the players were quieter than normal. But I said to Barry, you've got to help me with this, because Barry Ferguson, you've got to help me. You have to get into these guys about how important it is for us to win, because then if you win the game and you look back, you say, well, we done our job right to the very end. But what you'll never ever go over is if Celtic do drop points, and that you couldn't raise your game, raise your level to win that game. And thankfully it worked out amazingly. We were surprised obviously when Motherwell equalised and then got a winning goal as well. But the important thing for us was when we got that goal, the breakthrough goal. I think Buffel made it for wee Nacho, didn't he? And then I had the biggest sensation I'll ever experience in my life in football. It was a spine tingler that I've never had in my life when the Rangers fans exploded with the equalising goal for Scott won it.
Yeah.
Scott McDonald. And that roar, you know, in fact, when I say that word, I can feel it again. It was sensational, and I thought, what's happened?
Yeah.
And obviously, Motherwell equalised, and then, you know, the boys were trying to play keep ball. You know, the Big Marvin wasn't the best at keep ball, but you know, and he was wanting to run up the field and run with the ball. I said, "Get back there, you big man! Get back there!" And him and Kyriakos kind of played it out at the back, and to be fair, Hibs didn't want to come out over the halfway line because if they lost another goal, I think they were losing out in Europe by a goal difference or something. So they were guaranteed a European place with a 1-0 defeat.
Yeah.
So it kind of played into our hands a wee bit at the Scott McDonald moment. And then the next roar went up, and I thought, well, the Celtic game's finished. But then somebody corrected me and says, no, McDonald scored again. And, you know, okay, well, we've just got to get through this with, you know, Rangers 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, but Hibs definitely nothing. And they saw it to the end, and of course there wasn't much to go once that second roar went, and that's been the biggest, as I said, tingle through my spine that I've ever experienced in football in my whole career. And we won the Cup Winners' Cup. We won the treble. We won in the league with Arteta's penalty that day. I thought I could never feel anything
bigger than that.
any emotion like that. You know, it was so much bigger. That was probably bigger because it was leading us to a treble. But this one was and again it was a comeback of proportions because of the previous season was pretty crap, and we had gambled on a lot of players out of contract who were nearing the end of their careers, and it just didn't work for us. And getting Dado, getting people in January. Boomsong obviously came in the summer but left in January. Kyriakos came in and did a good job. But again, you know, that's recruitment. That's recruitment. But we did it in advance. We had Dado watched. I went to see him in the Champions League in Monaco when they played against Real Madrid, and he battered the Real Madrid centre halves. And you know, the Monaco got through to the, I think, was it the semi-final or the final or something that year. But Dado was brilliant, and Boomsong, I knew the level that he was already at. So there were 2 great signings in advance. But when you come 2 weeks before training starts and you start bringing in 6 free transfers,
not the right way.
It's a hard one.
Just want to finish up with the English, and then hand on to Kelly for the Scottish international memories, Alex. Birmingham. One thing that staggered me when I looked at the research for Birmingham was their highest finish in something like 50 years. He finished 9th in the league, which is the best finish in something like 50 years.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, that great day when you brought Fergie down there as well, and you beat Arsenal in the League Cup final in 2011.
Yeah.
I mean, that spell at Birmingham, was that always a lure for you as a coach to go and work in the English Premiership? Was it always something that you felt was an itch you had to scratch?
Yeah, you know, when I was in the Scotland job and we just narrowly missed out, I thought, well, six months before I'm going to be kind of working again, you know, and I was getting some interest before we played that Italian game, but I said, look, I said to my agent, closing the book with that. I don't want to talk to anybody about that because, you know, if it gets out, then I'll look like, you know, my mind was somewhere else. Yeah. But when it finished, the tournament, I thought, right, I've got to try England. You know, I really, really want to try England, just a personal ambition. And you know, again, it was working with the Gold, David Gold, Sullivan, Cam Brady. They, you know, didn't have a lot of money to spend, but we started to build a team in advance for the Premier League, and I had some phone calls with Karen on players that I'd already been scouting for about 4 or 5 months, just to try and get the final deals done. And you know, got Scott Dan at the time. Remember Scott plays for Crystal Palace. He ended up a fantastic player for us, helping us to 9th spot, as you say, in the Premier League. And then the following, when we win the Carling Cup, and you know, we had amazing times. Sometimes you feel we don't get the credit, and you deserve at times. But you know, for all those successes, you know, there's 1 or 2 failures, and we don't like to fail. But it's in the normal world that we're in, and not the normal or abnormal world that we're in these days. You know, 5 games, Frank de Boer is out of a job when he was at Crystal Palace. So that's the changed world that it was. And I thought, right, you know, I need to try and look at something else. When Birmingham get relegated and Villa came in right away, jumping across the city was something that I didn't think it was going to be like Rangers and Celtic, but believe me.
I've got to ask that question. That was my last question on the kind of club thing, because I know we're kind of conscious of time, so that Kayleigh can move on to Scotland one. So you're at Birmingham, who go down. Villa are still in the Premiership. They're in the same city. What the fuck were you thinking about?
Well, as I said, I was kind of I was really gutted at Birmingham being relegated, and we were down with 39 points.
One away from the traditional 40, right?
We had a 1 each in our hands with Tottenham, right? But Wolves had scored a goal. They lost the game 3-2. They were 3-0 down, but they got 2 goals back, and the goal gave them the jump above us. So we had to chase Tottenham for another goal, and you know, centre halves and everyone were running up the pitch, and we ended up losing. Pavlyuchenko had a screamer from about 25 yards, and you know, that was it. But if we'd have drawn 1 each, we would have finished in 40 points. But we ended up with no points, so we were in 39. But 40 still wouldn't have got us, and you can't do that now. You know, that's impossible now. So, you know, there was, again, the recruitment side of things always seemed to be firefighting, and I thought that, and the board were suggesting to me that they had seen some players that they thought could do well for us, and I said, you've got to let me pick them. And when they say, well, we're going to do this, you know, and the owners, you know, nowadays, foreign owners and stuff, and I said, well, look, I'm going to have to call it a day. And I handed my resignation, and Villa came. I think it's because of my accountancy skills that they I got all these jobs, you know, saving money left, right, and centre. Because the Villa remit was basically that as well. Had to save lob a bit. I can't say the figures, but a few million off the wages between the start of the season and the end of the season, and I reached the target and kept them in the Premier League, but still. It would
still end up one way. It
was a bit toxic for me, to be honest, and I was relieved to be out. But I could have put up an argument and got lawyers and said, well, he's done everything you've asked him to do, you know. Stay in the Premier League, drop all his wages off, and hallelujah, you know. Yeah, he didn't get a Champions League place, but you're still in the Premier. You just cannot do that these days. I mean, they're all spending 130 million now, and who was it last year? Fulham spent that and still
100 million. And still went down.
Couldn't stay up.
Big man, that was a pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll pass you on to Kayleigh now for the Scotland, the last segment, which is the Scotland segment. Cheers for that, Big, and appreciate it.
All right, great guys.
Hi, Alex. First of all, thank you for getting Hibs back to the Premiership. I was a season ticket holder that year, and I was probably 9 years old, and I remember celebrating it like we'd won the World Cup. So thank you for that.
That's a pleasure. Kaylee, I loved my time at Hibs. I really did. I loved my time there. As we spoke about Sozi, but also we Latape and Mixu Patalainen were kind of three major players who really transformed the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to start with the beginning of your Scotland career, when you played. What was it like representing Scotland at a World Cup, and which World Cup was your favorite to be a part of?
Yeah. Well, the first one was in '82 because that was in Spain, and I was delighted to be in the squad. I saw some other guys that Jock Stein had to let down a wee bit, and it was sad to see those guys' reaction. I thought, well, I'm really honoured to be going to the World Cup with Scotland. The first game against New Zealand, I think, was we won 5-2, but those goals always seem to come back to haunt us, the goals against. I didn't feature in that game. It was I think Alan Hansen and maybe Alan Evans. I'm not sure if Willie Miller played. But then in the second game, they played Russia, and Alan Hansen and Willie played, and I was on the bench again. So my first World Cup was really from the bench, and the last game was against Brazil and in Seville, and I came on as a sub at 3-1 for Brazil, and all of a sudden, in the back four, it became a back one with 5 minutes to go, because the other three had gone forward to join the rest of the midfielders and our forwards to surround Zico to get his jersey at the final whistle. He was there to take his shirt, you know. So they were all man-marking Zico, and I find myself the only guy back in defence, and I thought, this is comical, you know. They're all surrounding Zico, waiting in the final whistle, but then they got a free kick and they scored a fourth goal. So I couldn't prevent the tide when I come on at 3-1. So that was my first World Cup. The second one was '86 in Mexico. I started in the first game against Denmark. We lost 1-0. We played really well, and I thought, you know, we should add something from the game, but typical Scotland. And then in the second game, I got a bit of Mexican belly, and I did a fitness test with Sir Alex Ferguson in the morning, and he was my club manager at that time. He'd taken over because Jock Stein had died in the qualification process. And Alex Ferguson said, "You can't let me down here now. You know, you don't want to make your manager be embarrassed if you go on this pitch tonight and you're not capable." So I did the fitness test with him. We did some headers, did some little doggies, you know, 5-yard runs, and I really was breathing hard. And I said, "Look, Gaffer, you're right. I don't think I'm going to make it tonight." So I watched it from my bed in the hotel room, and we lost 2-1 to Germany. Good team, you know, that can always happen against a team of that stature. And after that came Uruguay, and I thought I would automatically go straight back in the team, but Sir Alex stayed with David Neary because he felt he hadn't done anything wrong in the Germany game. So I was a bit pissed off with that, and when we went back to Aberdeen, we had a good long chat about it. So I could see his point of view, and it's not easy for managers when they do selection. 1990 was the next World Cup. We went with such high expectations. Costa Rica, Sweden and Brazil were in our group, Brazil again. We played the first game with massive expectations that we would just turn up and win this game against Costa Rica. But I think instead of it empowering us, the fact that we were supposed to beat them. I think it actually spooked us a wee bit, and we never gave over our best in the game. I think there was a lot of hesitation, and when other times we would be assured, and it was probably the thought of losing to a team rated below us that gave us the bad performance. We also, tactically, we were trying to bombard the Costa Rica goalkeeper. There was supposed to be crosses. We put crosses in left, right, and centre because apparently he was rubbish at holding the ball in the air. I think he caught 21 out of 21 that day. He was absolutely inspired. We got beat anyway, and it caused a furore back home. We had bad press. Everybody was to get the axe. But typical Scotland, we like to show resilience, if not consistency. And the next game against Sweden, everybody was smarting from the criticism and saying, well, I'll show you, that's what Scottish people do. And we beat Sweden 2-1 in a great performance. And Sweden were kind of supposed to be below us in the rankings a wee bit. So again, we expected to win that one. But Costa Rica beat Sweden in their game as well, and kind of made the door shut a wee bit for us. So went back to the third game. Brazil played a really good game against them. Romario and Careca of Napoli were up front, and we kept them quiet, and we lost a shitty goal as the want of Scotland over the years. And Mo Johnson had a great chance with about 3 minutes to go. Taffarel saved it, and we were out of the World Cup. We were waiting on other results possibly coming through for our goal difference to be a factor, but it just didn't work out for us. So that was my 3 World Cups. I'm so proud to be at them, at those 3, and proud to play in all 3 in Italy. But I'll always be gutted at not getting through to the next qualification group, the last 16 or whatever. So that was it. And then the next time we were at the World Cup, I was doing the coaching course, I think, in France in 1998. So, great memories of World Cups. Kelly, yeah. Just a pity we didn't win one. Anything else you need from me there? Or have I covered that?
I think Kaylee's just frozen up there. It looks as if she's...
Yeah.
Aye, she's gone. I think she's using Craig Brown's Wi-Fi by the looks of it. So while we're waiting, we've got a couple of questions here, and I'm actually going to ask the people to ask the question, Alex, if you don't mind, while Kaylee puts another 50 pence in the meter. So the first question here, and I'm going to pass you to our Bureau's finest, Adam Hall. He used to be a barman at the Tutty's New Kin. But Adam, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, Adam?
Yeah, no problem. How you doing, Alex? So my question was, with your time at Genk, was there anything that sticks out about the way they do things in Belgium? Just in comparison, obviously, Belgium's been producing lots of really good players over the years.
Yeah. The one thing that they had, and Adam was right across from the stadium, was the academy. And it was, I think, one of the donors or the rich guys in Belgium kind of paid for it. And it was a great building, and their facilities were actually better than the ones we had across in the stadium. Our gym was a kind of old dilapidated gym with machines kind of stuffed in a very small kind of space. But the academy had everything, and Alec Ray was my assistant, and Alec and I, because we had so much time over there, our families went out with us, and they came out from time to time. But Alec and I went to watch the academy games, watch all the reserve games, and we saw what the coaches were doing. You know, the coach was one of the coaches, Michel Ribeiro. Is a Portuguese name, but he was brought up in Belgium, and Michel was training the centre halves to do step overs, you know, and then a 1-2 and a shot for goal. And I said, well, centre halves in Scotland only head the ball and make hard tackles, you know. And he said, yeah, I know. He said, no, but coach, he says that all that we're trying to do is we're trying to make all the boys familiar with the football, and that was their real kind of mantra, you know, in terms of what they wanted most was the players to be comfortable with the ball at their feet, and that's why they did all these drills. Listen, we would have done them as well, but a lot of teams would do them back home in the UK. But that was one of the things that I spotted at training, and they did a lot of individual skills, you know, skills sessions. And what I also saw, I brought a British coach over. He wanted to come and see training, and I said, yeah, come and watch the academy. And on that day, we were playing Anderlecht on the Sunday night, so we had Anderlecht's youngsters over on the Saturday morning in Genk, and that's the way they do it with the system. So we watched the under-9s, and then we watched the under-11s, and then we went to the 15s and then 19s or something. So there was loads of pitches, and I asked the English coach what he thought, and he says, I think that much better than anything that's happening in Premier League. You know, we had little left backs at 9 years of age. You know, when a full back goes into the corner and he's getting pressed by a forward, and instead of just lumping it out the pitch, he used his body, and they teach them how, you know, obviously the core is very important in football, and it's a thing that kind of developed over the last 15 years or so. You hear more and more of it, but they really do concentrate on core. And so this little guy, instead of kicking out the pitch, he put his backside into the guy and held him off, and either they get themselves a free kick, or else they managed to manipulate themselves out of it. And it was just a small detail that this guy was so impressed by. And as for the skilled, and yet one of the coaches said to me that he thought that the English coaches, talking about Premier League here, the English coaches concentrated more on strength, and he wanted to come across and find out about that. So that was his take on the difference between their kids and the kids back here in England. But certainly watching the academies and watching them all, he says, I've got to say, I think the level's higher than it is in England. And they frequently get British teams coming over and playing friendly games. So good question, Adam. Yeah, I was really impressed by the Genk Academy. And saying that, then I mentioned earlier about Wilfred Ndidi. He was the only signing that I made that season, €100,000, and he's at Leicester now, and they're talking about huge money for him. Sergei Milinkovic-Savic came into the team. He's Lazio, and they're talking about 80-90 million. It's frightening. And Timmy Castagna, an 18-year-old, I brought him into the first team. What they said to me, the remit was a typical kind of Red Adair situation. They said, look, this is a transitional season for us. We're not getting money to spend, but if you sell somebody, the usual, you could maybe bring somebody in. So anyway, Alec Ray and I looked at the young boys, brought in Timmy Castagna, as I said, to to the right back position, and I played him the whole season, an 18-year-old, and he's now playing at Atalanta, and he's broke through into the Belgian team. He played against Scotland in a friendly last year. So these are, I think, good examples of how you can help young players as well. But yeah, it was a really good grounding coaching sessions, Adam, over there. Really good skill lessons.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. I think Kaylee's got the 50 pence back in and she's good to go again.
You jinxed me from last week. You jinxed me. Sorry about that, guys. The internet went out. What was the last thing you guys spoke about? Just to catch me up real quick.
We were talking about Craig Brown's Wi-Fi. That was the last thing we mentioned.
Yeah, you jinxed me. So my next question was, what aspects of your international experience have you taken forward and continually used in your management career from where you played?
Yeah, always remember Jockstein saying something quite simple to me, and when I made my debut with Scotland, he said, I was actually thinking about when I play for Scotland in my first game, I'm going to have to do something special, like a Cruyff turn or something, or nutmeg somebody, do something different, because I'm now playing at a higher level and I'm playing for the national team. And Jockstein said to me, and I was still thinking this before the game, and then he came to me and he said, look, the reason I brought you into this environment was because of what you were doing with your club. He says, just keep doing what you were doing with your club. And it was so simple, a little explanation that I thought, wow, and it relaxed me so much. Because I was really bricking it, thinking I need to do something special. I'm playing for the national team, but I stuck to my own, winning a ball, trying to keep it, and make sure we made the challenges and be a good defender. So he may say something different to one of the more creative players, but that was the wee tip that he gave me, and one that I kind of always carried in my head throughout my career, and I've said that subsequently to a lot of players when they come into the team. The reason you got in this team is because of what you were doing when we saw you last week, or playing with with the reserves, or playing with whoever. And if it was a national team, then the same thing. So I stole that one from Jock. But there's loads of great pieces of advice from managers like Sir Alex Ferguson over the years, and things you hear about guys like Walter Smith and Craig Brown, Andy Roxburgh were tremendous as well. They gave us great support and very, very good fine detail.
Good. Okay, so moving now on to your coaching career, Scotland. I think we all remember James McFadden's wonder strike against France. Can you talk us through that moment from your perspective? Also, like the approach to that game.
Yeah. Well, the James McFadden goal was something that we practiced in training. I told him to do it 10 times in training, and he scored 10 times in the practice. You're not buying that, are you? No, because that's
No.
Well, James McFadden was, as I said earlier, you get maverick players and you get guys that do something special and do something different. And James was one of those guys. We played him in that kind of behind the striker, or he may have been up on his own as well at times. And he's just the type of guy who can do that. But the preparation for it was quite good from the point of view that I got a wee bit of information from one of the French newspapers. I studied French at school. I'm not fluent, but I can read a lot of it. And I read in L'Equipe magazine that the French coach was going to play two midfielders in central midfield. Normally, he would have a holding midfielder. And I felt that playing the two midfielders would be good for our strategy, because I was able to put two of our good midfielders up against them and stop them playing. Wasn't it Tigana? It was the Arsenal centre midfielder. God, the names at the moment. And I think that's ridiculous. I should be remembering those names. But our two midfielders marked them. And I had a holding midfielder, Paul. You all right? Yeah. And my holding midfielder was able to be free to play against the French other centre forward. So the strategy of the whole thing worked really well for us, although the French still dominated possession for quite a lot of the game. We had Paul Hartley was our holding midfielder, and when James scored the goal, then the French did everything they could. They put on about four strikers at the end. They had four strikers try to bombard us at the end. And they threw everything at us, but we held strong, and it was just a wonderful night and a wonderful achievement for James McFadden to score that winning goal.
Were you anxious on the bench?
Yeah, when Roy Aitken was one of the assistants, Andy Watson, and I turned to them after about 5 minutes after James scored, and I said, surely that must be about time now. And they're saying, Alec, there's 20 minutes to go, So we were wishing the time away, but when you're on that touchline and kicking every ball, then it really does become a little bit tense, and you can feel the pressure. But at the same time, when that final whistle goes, the feeling was wonderful. And I'll never forget, there was some friends I knew in Edinburgh, Hibs fans as well, who stayed at the end. A couple of guys who work in the law business in Edinburgh, and they were shouting down when I was doing the interviews with the television people. So a great night, and I've got a nice tribute photo in the house, and on it says Ec de Triomphe instead of Arc de Triomphe, and it's James McFadden celebrating in the picture, and I'm in there somewhere as well.
That's awesome. What were some of your priorities and your philosophies while leading Scotland?
Well, when I took over from Walter Smith, excuse me, I'm sweating here. So hot here in London. When I took over from Walter Smith, Walter had a pretty good run, and I thought, right, let's keep a kind of consistency here. And I've always kind of gone in the philosophy of Sir Alex, and when he always liked to play at a fast tempo, pass the ball quickly and with assertiveness, and I kind of took all those kind of philosophies to the teams that I managed or coached or whatever, and don't get caught in the ball. It was little things like that, because once you lose the ball in international level to players of the French capabilities, or the Italians, the Latins always seem to be a bit more technically gifted, then you can be in big trouble. So that was one of the most important things, was protection of the ball. The ball is king. You've heard that before, but the one thing, and I took the years that had the success with Rangers was to get them to play a little bit quicker. Wasn't to get the ball to the forwards as quickly by hitting it long. It was passing it quickly, and supporting it with third man runners was a big feature as well. So it was really trying to get the best out of every individual, and if they could raise the bar a wee bit, then when you get international football, then that's the kind of reaction that you're looking for.
Last question. You touched on this a little already, but in this profession, there's always going to be highs and lows, which you've obviously experienced with Scotland. Do you have any advice for the coaches of how to deal with this lows?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that is, it's difficult when you as a coach that you've lost your job, or you feel as if that you don't have any support. But the thing is about the modern day game is that as soon as you get into a situation where that you're out of a job, then the support comes flooding in, from like the League Managers Association or anybody, others in the game that you have that have mentored you, for instance. You're kind of looking for the reasons why it didn't quite work out. I think you can kind of work a lot of them out yourself because of the experience that certainly I felt that I've had over the years. And as you know, a big feature of this interview has been about recruitment. And when Scotland have been struggling for the last 20 years now, and in terms of qualification, we haven't qualified for a major tournament. Or obviously something's happened to our game in terms of the quality and the talent that we've had over the years. I do see a wee chink of light now with the current guys. Stevie Clark got a good little run in the last few games, and hopefully the qualification process against Israel, and that's got to give Scotland a really good chance. With Andy Robertson doing so well and him becoming more stronger in his beliefs and his ability, then that's another plus for Scotland. What we're looking for is probably a striker, a striker that can bang the ball in the net every time we get a chance. Like back in the days when I played with McCoist or Mo Johnston or Kenny Dalglish, then that's a wee bit missing at the moment. But yeah, you definitely feel that you need a little bit of support, when you get into a situation like that. But there's plenty, believe me, there's plenty of support out there, and you should never reject that, because coaches, we're only human. It's almost like sometimes you think, well, it's water off a duck's back. It's no problem. I'll just go and get another job. But if you really care, then believe me, it hurts. It hurts as well. So we've had these setbacks, and when I left Rangers, then I knew it was probably at Rangers and Celtic. It's like you get a shelf life, and I felt it was time to go. That was the correct moment to go. I was sorry to leave Scotland in the recent appointment, but happy that they're in the playoffs, which I felt in terms of the rebuilding of the squad and the team is probably the best we could have done. The group stage was going to be very tough against the Russians and indeed the leaders, Belgium. So the other side of it is that we do have a lot of good young players coming through. At last, for a very long time, we've struggled for that.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be in a major
Oh, I'm sorry, Kelly. You're struggling.
I think you're breaking up there a bit, Kelly. Sorry about that. And I'll just jump in here. We've got a couple of questions to finish.
Pass it off to some questions.
No, it's still breaking up there.
That could be the new. That could be the new #1 in the British charts.
Last couple of questions, and thanks so much, Kayla. I don't know if it's just on pause or hold there. Richard Foy, Richard from beautiful Bells Hill is going to step in, and he's got a question for us here, Alex.
Hi.
Hi, Alex. It's a bit of a double question here. So first things first, obviously, between yourself, Billy Davis, Paul Lambert, Chris McCart, even George Burley, all from that early 90s Motherwell team, what did you take from maybe Tommy McLean that inspired you all to go into coaching? And then second thing, when you moved and transitioned from player into the coaching role, did you have to change the way you interacted with players? And what was the most challenging aspect of this?
Yeah, listen, Tommy was a player that, when he was a footballer, that I really admired his skills and his techniques as a footballer, cracking player. And then when he went into management, he was such a good organiser, just in the following in the footsteps of his big brother Jim McLean. And he had that Motherwell team organised so well that it made the job for me a little bit easier to go into. I knew I was inheriting some really good quality players who had a bit of flair as well. You consider Rob McKinnon, the flying left back, but also, as I said, the master craftsman up front, Tommy Coyne. And Tommy got a third place, and I ended up getting a second place. But Tommy built that team. If I gave him a little bit of more, I think Chris McCart thought that maybe I let them express themselves a bit more. Tommy was more of keeping them tight and organised and unleashing them at a certain moment, which was great strategies. Everybody's got different ways. But what a great start it was for me to go to a club like Motherwell with the players that they had there and the players that Tommy had, enhanced their careers over the years and made them better players. So what was the second bit again, Rich, of your question now?
Just in terms of what was the most challenging aspect transitioning from coach to player? Like, was there any, player to coach, was there any difficult player or situations, that kind of idea?
Sometimes when I went from that position of player straight to coach, you start to think, right, I need to kind of maybe do a hairdryer on them or something, and do what Alex Ferguson did. So I remember Chris McCart saying to me years later that when we were in Holland in pre-season, the first year I was there, and I'd only just met the boys, and after one of the games, I kind of had to go at them. But Chris said to me a few years later, I remember you come in and you were just a new manager, and you tried to give us the Alex Ferguson. He said, we were all talking about that later on and saying, that wasn't really very convincing, was it? So I said, you should have told me that week. But anyway, actually, I sussed it myself, because when I got back to my bedroom, my room, and it was just a wee room, which I felt, that's when I'm starting to feel the butterflies of the new challenge and new task that I had. What am I going to do with these guys? I'm not a manager yet. I'm just starting. And I thought about the speech, and I said, nah, I need to stop that. That's just not me. You know, that's not me. I can't just. Alex Ferguson could turn it on and off like a switch, and probably not even mean it as such. But he had the temerity to kind of just barge right in there. But I said no. I'm just going to be myself. I tried to be Fergie there for 5 minutes, but I'm going to be myself, and that did work better in the end, Richard.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. And last two questions here we've got from the group. We've got Troy McKerrow, who's from the beautiful Isle of Bute and Rossi, and is now in Kansas City, Missouri. Troy.
My question is just off of the little thing when you mentioned Michel and Genk. When you mentioned his name, I just texted him and he said to say hello to you, enjoyed.
Yeah.
But when he was here, I went and observed him and watched all his stuff. And one of the big things was he would demonstrate everything. And then he said to me, he's like, Troy, demonstrations are key at the youth level. What's your thoughts on that at the youth and going into first team level as well?
I think the demonstration of the demo is absolutely gold. Having watched Michel, we really loved him going to his sessions, Troy, and he was absolutely fantastic at delivering. There was nothing, if one of the young players couldn't grasp it and it was breaking down all the time, he would just get him to walk to the side and watch it and say, look, just watch for a couple of minutes and then see if you can grasp what we're doing, we'll bring you back in. So that's terrific coaching, that is, and that's not throwing kids under a bus and they have to learn, because as I said earlier in the interview, that they don't have all the answers as yet, and sometimes you never have all the answers, and you get to the end of your career, but you're far more experienced and you've learned a lot. But for me, demonstration is really important. And the thing about Michel Ribeiro is he didn't complicate it. It was, reasonably easy. Did you find that to understand what he was putting across?
Oh yeah, definitely.
No, great question. A great coach, and say hello back to him for me.
I will do.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. And last question we have here from David Beveridge, who's is for East Kilbride and is now in, where are you from now? You're now in Toronto, David.
Yeah. Hi, Alec. My question would be the lack of schoolboy football over the last 15, 20 years. Do you think that's hindered Scottish football?
Yeah, losing it, yeah. We've had this one, David, haven't we, over many, many years. And we used to talk about street football being missing from the normal Scottish kids' diet, if you like, of growing up. We used to, there was no cars in the streets, we used to go there. Then the Dutch introduced the small-sided games to try and cover that gap, as they obviously had cars in the streets as they evolved also. But the schools football was a fantastic breeding ground, and I know that things change, and definitely it's going to be, if you say go back to that, I don't think it's the thing to do. But certainly for a few years after the schools football was kind of binned, then we lost our way a wee bit, and I think that's kind of had an ongoing effect. The academies have come in. Are we doing it right? Are we doing it as good as they're doing it in England? Are the coaches better there? Are they, how do you test the coaches? As Gordon Strachan said, as a DNA, we seem to be a small nation, and okay, the Spanish have got small players, but they seem to have very, very technical and very athletic small players, whereas our small players are not as athletic and they're smaller. So there's all these arguments, but I think there's a chink of light, and in terms of over the last couple of years, the young players who are coming through, we've still got to find that elusive striker. I had to rely on a veteran striker, Stevie from Sheffield Wednesday, and he led the line brilliantly in those games against Albania and Israel. So when you have to turn to 33-year-old and you know it's really a struggle when you don't have a bunch of young guys coming up through the ranks like you had Alex McLeish, you had Mo Johnson, you had about 4 or 5 strikers vying for the number 9. John Robertson, you know, they were all vying for the number 9 slot. And interestingly, we were talking about Shelley Carey earlier on. She was saying that when she's recruiting young girls into her team, they only want to be central midfield players, you know. He says, where is it you play then? You know, because I'm looking for a centre forward. She said, centre mid. Everybody's a centre, wants to be a centre mid for some reason. And we're looking for that real Scottish hero again. The boy McBurney at Sheffield Wednesday, he's a couple of caps now. He's still got to get that elusive first goal, I think, and possibly, you know, he can do something for us. But, you know, with Stevie, when I had to bring Stevie Fletcher in, and Stevie's legs are a kind of situation where he's struggling now, you know, to put a string of games together, then, you know, it's not the future. It's definitely not the future. But for that little tournament, the qualification games, Stephen was fantastic up front for those 2 games. And, you know, schools football, we learned a lot there, didn't we? Now it's academies from 8 to right through to the senior level. The one thing that does perturb me a bit about academies and some of the things that I've heard is that when a 9-year-old is told by a scout, or sorry, the trainer, coach, that he'll never make the grade. I mean, that's a horror story. To say that about a 9-year-old who you just don't know how they're going to develop. I mean, if I was told that at 9, I wouldn't have had the career that I had. And because I was determined and I grew 4 inches between 15 and 17. So please, you know, coaches out there, don't tell kids at the age of 9 that they're not going to make the grade, because what they do, and for what the experience I've heard of recent times, is that it actually does them in, and they say, all right, that's it, I'm lost to football now. I'm going to do something else. And we could, you never know, you'll lose a lot of players who could evolve into great players. And we've seen many of those coming late in the day in the past, you know, like Jamie Vardy, for instance, at Leicester. You know, he was a late developer. Never tell a kid at 9 that he'll never make it, because he's got so much to happen to his body and to his mindset and to the determination that they have. So, I mean, can I put that question out to you? Have you guys heard of any of those examples? I've heard of that in Scotland, for instance. Nobody? All quiet?
I think other Wi-Fi's have gone, Alex.
Is that right?
Any other questions, guys, just to wrap it up here? You know, anybody else got a question? You can stick it in the box on the right. Otherwise, we'll let Alex get back to his garden.
Actually, I'm going for a haircut.
Oh, yeah. The barbers have just opened up again.
Well, mine's as a family member. So.
Well, I just want to, wrap up here, Alex, and say a huge thanks from everybody. That was brilliant, just to sit and pick your brains for a wee while. And, we so appreciate you giving up your time and slumming it in that wee cleaner's closet that you've got there where your computer is. And it's just been a pleasure sitting with you. And, we can't thank you enough, Kaylee and Takingi. Thanks for all the questions and the research. And thanks for being with us, Alex.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alex.
Be safe. All the best.
Kaylee. That's Kaylee the Dalek.
Colin, can you say goodbye to the Loudon Tavern?
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Best of luck, big man.
See you guys. Hey, Cole. All the best.
Yeah. Cheers, pal. All the best.
Big man. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Alex. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Eric.